What's up, guys? Welcome to the Creative Collective podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Creative Collective podcast. Super excited. This is our first season, and today we have a special guest. Her name is Caitlyn Wilson. Super excited to have you, Caitlyn. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm a little nervous.
You
I'm not gonna lie.
Hey, that's okay. Yep. Hey, it's all right. But we're friends. This is a conversation.
You're right.
We normally have this conversation anyways.
Okay.
We're just on the camera and on the mic. That's the only difference.
Yep.
But it's all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so our topic today, what I really want to start talking and diving into beforehand, really would love for you just to introduce yourself. Let us know who you are. Who is Caitlyn?
Yeah, who is me?
Yeah.
Caitlyn. Well, it all started in 1989 when I was born. No, I am a wife. I am a mom. But most importantly for this podcast, I'm a creative.
Yeah.
And we're collabing,
Yes.
which I think is
So
just I'm so excited about this podcast.
Yeah.
But I've been a creative for my whole life, because you don't just become a creative when you start picking up a creative job.
Yeah.
And so I just loved to do creative things my whole life. I love to dream up magazines.
Yeah.
I love to take my disposable cameras to camp and shoot all my friends.
Yeah.
And you just do what you can when you're a kid with
Yeah.
what you have, right?
For sure.
And just so as I've gotten older, of course, it's gotten, technology has gotten better, but also just, you grow, which
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah.
Also, me and my husband pastor a church
Yes.
in Beaumont,
Come
Texas.
on, Trinity.
And
Let's
so
go.
that has been fun. And there's a whole aspect of creativity with church.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, because the Lord is a creator and he made us creations and creators as well. So I think it's been fun. We've been lead pastors for 6 years. So this October,
6 years.
This October.
Come on.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
I was thinking the other day, we've been lead pastors longer than we were associate or youth pastors, and I was like, how did that even happen?
That's so
Life
cool.
just flies by.
So cool.
Yeah. I don't feel like there's ever anything really special about me. I think the specialness about people is just in like the details and knowing them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
sure.
there are some people are just extraordinary.
Yeah.
Just like the Lord made them incredible just with their talents, but just knowing people, and I think the relational aspect
For sure.
of creativity and like you said, the collaboration, that is what I feel like just makes me come alive. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm super stoked to have you.
Yes.
Our topic today, we're going to kind of really dive into creative grit.
Yeah.
Those two words it's kind of hard to really distinguish or have this conversation. But I remember we were talking a few weeks ago, and I feel like what is needed a lot of times when you are creative is that I think sometimes it could be hard to focus on one thing or to really allow something to come to life, right?
Yeah.
And so I really want to hit home with this idea, because you and I, we're pretty similar in personalities.
Yes.
We like to have fun with what we're doing.
Yeah.
We don't really like to be told what to do. We just distinguish
we're
all of these different
squirrely.
things. Yeah, we're a little squirrely. We like to go oh, here, let me do this, let me do this, let me do that, all over the place. But I really want to kind of talk and dive into what is creative grit to you. So if you had to define it, what would be your definition as we kind of move forward into this podcast? What is your definition of creative grit?
Yeah, I was thinking about this podcast. I really felt like why did he use the word grit? You don't hear that word much except in country music movies, what is it? True Grit, True Grit, John Wayne or whoever's in that movie. But I feel like grit really is a stronger word than even just I don't even know what's a synonym of grit. I think it's just such a stronger word that you chose. persevering through the squirreliness,
For
wanting to quit, through like being like learning and disciplining yourself to be consistent.
Wow.
I looked up what the actual definition is, and it was firmness of mind or spirit, which is very interesting. But I just think like pressing through until you get like a breakthrough or till you have growth. So like that reminds me of just like discipline just in itself. Like having discipline, and once you get to a certain point, you just start doing it. It's just habit, you know? And so whenever we're talking about creative grit, I feel like I was even thinking about it in terms of just how I am. I can just be so all over the place, squirrely. And so I don't feel like sometimes I have much grit in some ways because I'm just
trying to figure things out.
Trying to figure things out, but then like, am I happy with this? Am I being a perfectionist? Do I even want to put this out there? So like, you've got to start to have grit. You've got to start, and then you've got to persevere.
So creative grit to you is the ability to, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's the ability to move forward, to persevere, to not give up. And even I think a lot of our similar like personalities is that we can be all over the place, right? But I think that there's a moment where, and we can, let's talk a little bit about the God factor in creative grit. Because I do believe that us like being believers and being fully, like our foundation is in Christ. I do believe that like God gives you that ability to actually persevere and move forward and to go through things and be consistent. Because honestly, if I'm being truthful, in my own personality, I'm not very consistent. But it's only through God that I can actually be consistent and persevere and move forward. So let's talk a little bit more different, like let's pinpoint it to our specific lives, because I feel like what's going to actually really help somebody that may be listening or watching is, okay, so I have this big, grand idea, right? And I want to maybe start photography. I want to start a business, or I want to start a church, or I want to start a magazine or a coffee shop, right? So there's so many, so many things that we go through in our life.
Let's get some wisdom on that.
How do you define what to work on? And how do you define to move forward in that specific area?
Ooh. That was a lot to unpack, especially with like you named like 12 businesses. But photography, that's what I've done for the past 7 years professionally. I just had to kind of commit like, okay, I'm really going to dive in. I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn about this. And that's normally what I start with. I'm one of those people who will like, if you put an ad out there for me that says, do you want to learn such and such? And I'm like, yes, sign me up. I don't always pay the money, but I'll go to the free seminar that's like 2 hours long, you know, or 6 hours. You know, I once did a FBA fulfilled by Amazon seminar, like 6 hours long, like taking notes in the back of my car. So I think that first you really have to learn about what it is that you're taking on.
So good.
Because most of the time after I learn it, I'm like, that is so fascinating, but that is not for me. So I just think that you just have to learn. You have to learn, you have to research, and you have to decide if that's something that you're going to stick with. Did I answer your question correctly?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not missing something.
So let me stop right there. So to kind of clear it up. So your first distinguishing what you're actually really going to persevere and move forward is you first step back and say, let me spend just a few hours or 6 hours learning to see if I actually even enjoy what I'm about to step into. Okay. Perfect.
Either like actually doing it or researching about it beforehand. And there's so much information out there. You guys can find anything. Obviously some of the stuff you have to pay for because courses, etc. But you can really find free stuff everywhere. So many free things. So I mean, also your community, talking to your community. Or if you don't have a community, there's lots of online communities that you can become a part of. Facebook groups has blown up over the past however many 5 years.
Right.
and they're just nuts. But they're great resources
Right.
because there's so many people in those, and people are just minds, wells of knowledge that you don't even know. You wouldn't know that I spend however many hours researching this or that, or even know like the littlest bit about something, right?
Yeah.
And so I just think that like getting into your community, asking questions of some people. Okay, so there are some people who are competitive though.
Yeah.
Who are not, they don't want to answer your questions. And like, just leave them people alone.
Yeah.
Because those people, they're just not for you.
Right.
If you want to be a creative that collabs, that is in community over competition.
Yeah.
In community, there is warmth. In competition, there is ice cold.
Yep.
And so you want the warmth. Yep. I promise you, you want the warmth.
It's a better life. For sure.
Even if you make less money. I don't think you're going to make less money. But even if you did, because you're helping someone else.
Yep.
That's where my God factor comes in. The Lord is going to like bless me for being a blessing to other people. So, I mean, I think that's kind of I feel like everyone in the world kind of believes that to some degree. It's kind of a principle of life.
Yeah. So when you're defining creative grit, it is more or less you're pinpointing a certain area, right?
Yeah.
And then there has to be, I think, even with creatives, there has to be some stepping out. I want to like maybe give an example, if you have one, of maybe a moment where you actually wanted to really give up, because Caitlyn is a dynamic photographer, like seriously, top of the line.
So nice.
So good.
I don't know.
But is there a moment where, because we talk about creative grit and like the word grit means to persevere, to move forward. It's that kind of idea to never give up.
Yeah.
Is there a specific time in your photography career where you felt like, oh man, not stepping away because God told you to step away, right? Because I know that was a season more so recently, but like literally wanting to give up. And it might be year 1, year 2, year 3. Like, I'm terrible at this. I don't want to do this. Was there ever a moment like that you really were like facing in your life?
I didn't have too many of those moments. I always strive to get better. And if I don't know something, I'm going to be either upfront about it or tell you like, hey, I haven't done that, but I'm going to try if that's what you'd like. And so I'm just very real with what I can do and what I can't do.
That's good.
So I'm never going to just like BS it and just like say that I can do that. Like, I'm going to be upfront with you. Like, I haven't done it much, or I haven't done it really at all, but we can try it, you know?
Yeah.
Don't know what it's going to turn out like.
Yeah.
But then that's when like the researching comes in. And so a lot of things aren't as hard as you think they are. Sometimes in our mind, that's just a side note. Sometimes we build things up to be so difficult, and they're not as hard as we think they are. It just, it's crazy. But I feel like after my child, having my child, I felt like I was kind of just burnt out.
Wow.
I wasn't having fun anymore. I wasn't enjoying it as much. I felt like I didn't have any new poses or I just kind of felt just like dry.
Stagnant.
You know, dry. Like I just felt like I was looking at all these young girls around me, young men around me in our hometown that are like bursting. Like they're the new thing, and like they're very good.
Yeah.
And they're, you know, Gen Z, and they're like, they know all the things and artsy, and they do different weird stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I love this.
Yeah.
But it was just so different. And I just was like, man, I just feel stagnant. And I think I just was like, I just don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't feel like happy doing it. Which is kind of I think what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of a sign that you either need to have a refresh of some sort.
Yeah.
Or maybe put it down for a while. Because you don't want to do something that you're not passionate about. I get that it could be your business and it could be your livelihood, and you have to do it.
Right.
But there are always ways that you can tweak. You can do different things.
Yeah.
There's facets of business. But
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
There's always that temptation to compare yourself to others. And like, comparison brings no joy to you.
Yep, for sure.
It brings no value to your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just really destroys you.
Yeah.
And so you can get inspiration from others, but don't
sure.
compare yourself.
Wow.
If you feel like, oh, they're way better than me, learn from them.
Yeah.
You
that's
know,
good. It's like a mentality switch. You
Yes.
have to like switch your mentality to like be
100%.
aware and know, okay, this person has been around longer or maybe does have new creative ideas.
Yeah.
So instead of me pulling back, why don't I want to even pursue them, or why don't I actually celebrate them?
Yeah.
I think now getting into
absolutely celebration.
Oh my goodness. I think one of the hard factors for me when it comes to the creative world is that we have a hard time celebrating each other. We have a hard time celebrating each other's successes. We have a hard time celebrating each other's failures.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like to say, okay, like it's not about
That's another thing.
Yeah.
I actually learned that last year about celebrating failures. And I was like, why would we celebrate failures? But just like the fact that you tried.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
How many inventors did they try and try and try and try? And if they had not failed and not tried, then they wouldn't have gotten to their goal.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
Or other people,
Yeah.
mediums or painters or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
But celebration
Yep.
is so important.
Yeah, and I think that it's that factor of like, okay, I'm going to cheer you on. Because when I think about creative grit, yes, I know it's about perseverance and I know it's about moving forward and not giving up.
Yeah.
But like you said earlier, it's more or less about who you're surrounding yourself with.
Yeah.
Because in order to if I'm being honest, to really move forward and to not give up, you have to have some level of accountability.
Yes, you have to.
Because if you don't, then it's like, often in my own world, I won't share things until I'm actually kind of ready to semi-do it. And even sometimes when I share them, I'm like, maybe I shared that prematurely. Because then the people that are around me, they keep me accountable. And they're like, oh, I think you're supposed to do that. You said that like 6 months ago. Why didn't you do that?
Yeah.
Or, and so it's like, it's almost a win and a like kind of a, oh man, I shouldn't say that out loud.
Yeah.
But it's the truth. Like your words actually have power. You can create
with your
the
words.
world you live in and what you do by the power of your words.
Yeah.
And so it's this idea.
Yeah.
I think that it's often hard, but celebrating your failures, celebrating your successes, and then building your community, for me, in my own life, that's how I've gotten through in creative grit. And there are moments too where you'll try things and I'm like, oh, we're not perfect, and I've done them prematurely, right? Where it's like, man, I really wanted to do that certain thing. I did it, but I don't know if it was out of God's timing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about
Ooh.
let's talk about moving forward in God's timing.
Okay.
Because there are things that you do need to just step out in. I believe that sometimes in the Christian circles, we wait for God to tell us something when really God's just waiting on us to act and move. But then there's also
you're just coming for their throats. Just
there's
just
also things where we prematurely step into something that God has not given us the grace or designed us to step into.
Right?
How do you, in your world, distinguish what to step into?
Yeah.
And what is God's timing and what is not?
Goodness. Well, I think that sometimes it takes like that research and that starting or like that walking towards it. And if it just kind of doesn't pan out, doesn't feel right, it's like, that's not really for me. It's just kind of finding that your peace.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do things motivated by money, and I don't think we should. We need money, and we should. That's not a bad thing necessarily.
For sure. But
I think that to be purely motivated by money can be so detrimental, because then we're not doing things out of, well, either even the Lord's timing or even the Lord's will, like what he wants us to do.
Right.
Because we're just doing things that look like, oh, they'll make us money. So I kind of just check my heart.
Yeah.
Make sure my motives are pure. Like, why do I want to do this? Am I passionate about it?
Wow.
Yep. Do I have support going into it from my husband, from my friends, from my community even, possibly. If you can check that, sometimes you can't. It's harder. And then just kind of feeling it out. It's not the easiest thing ever.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, sometimes it's yes, but it's not right now.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes it's right now, but you don't want to start because you're too scared to start.
Wow.
Or you're too scared that it's not going to be perfect, or you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And so you just, it can't be that good, like those people that have been doing it for 12 years.
Wow.
And so you don't start. So everyone's going to be very different.
Yeah.
And you just have to kind of realize that sometimes don't be motivated by fear.
Yeah.
Don't be motivated by money.
For sure.
And don't be motivated by just like pressure.
Yeah. And I think often too, for me, I feel like sometimes we think that everything's going to be easy because God's grace is over it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But often times in my life, walking into something just because he's gifted me with it doesn't mean that there's not going to be grit or perseverance or hard work that's attached to it.
I mean, where in the Bible do we see, it just got handed to this person?
Yeah. Yeah. No, for
where?
Sure. For sure.
Show me.
For sure. And I think oftentimes we feel as if, this is something that God has really been speaking to me about when it comes to creative grit.
Sorry, Mike.
And it's this one thing that sometimes we have to be creative in the dark in order for the light to really shine through and for us to be successful.
Can you expound on that?
I can. I'd love to. Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome, our special guest, Andrew Winston.
So I've been kind of researching this idea with what creativity looks like from the beginning. And literally the first verses in the Bible was, in the beginning, God created.
Yeah.
But I often go to, how long was God sitting in the dark before he created?
How long?
Before he actually called the heavens and the earth, before he called the sun and the moon and the stars and all these different things, how long was he sitting in the dark? And I feel like oftentimes we step into our giftings prematurely because we haven't been seasoned enough in the dark. And in the dark doesn't mean, like I'm working through my soul and all these. In the dark means you're cultivating your giftings.
Or you're being refined.
Or you're being
your
refined.
character.
Or your character. That's character's another thing.
Another podcast episode.
Another podcast.
Come back later.
Yeah, come back later. Thank you. But yeah, so it's this idea. Okay, I've learned a little bit to sit in the dark before I can actually go and call myself professional. Say for instance, dance.
Yeah.
Dance for me, sitting in the dark was training 5 to 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, since I was 12 years old. Then when I become 17, I have the opportunity to be in the movies and do these different things because why? I've taken time.
Yeah.
To develop my giftings. I've trained. I've and it doesn't happen that way for everything, right? Like,
no.
There's no way I could train to say, I started a business, I trained for it.
And some people learn as they go.
Right. But I will say that I've trained in leadership. I have led people. Yeah. I have, led teams of people. I've consistently showed up to work. I've seen things grow. So I've had the ability to do those different things. But sitting in the dark sometimes requires us to actually cultivate our giftings before God can bring them to the light. So, with that.
Someone clip that. That's good.
With that being said, how do you choose to sit in your, I don't want to say darkness because that sounds so like depressing
evil.
And but what are some things that God has really been molding in your heart that you're like, okay, I'm going to sit on this. I'm going to sit on this for a minute. And because our personalities are like, let's just go after it. Let's just do it. Like, we have a dream and I'm going to make it happen. Yeah. But what are some things, and you don't have to share specifics, but is there something that's been in your heart and your mind where you've been, I'm going to sit on this one. I'm going to prayerfully think this through.
Yeah.
Because I do believe in this, but I don't know if this is the right time.
Yes. So the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually just, while you were talking, I was thinking about how we recorded that episode for that podcast.
Yes.
I've never been on a podcast, and I tried to start a podcast like 5 years ago after a major hurricane came through and my mom was dying of cancer.
Yeah.
And I just was like, our motto, well, we need a better confession motto.
Yeah.
But our motto, especially in those years, was people be tripping.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was just so tired of people and how they were acting, how, like, their friendships were just not, they weren't acting like friends. And, you know, because we've been friends 11 years, we know how to respond to each other. We know, I just got so frustrated, and I was like, I'm just going to make a podcast about friendships. And so we sat down like this kind of, but it was in my kitchen table.
Yes.
I was wearing a Taylor Swift shirt. And I did not know what I was doing, but we recorded a video on my photo booth.
Yes.
It's never seen the light of day yet, but you might see some of it soon because it's hilarious. But just thinking about that and just thinking about, like, I was not ready to start anything like that. I was going through such a hard season, but it's still in my heart.
Yeah.
And it's even matured in my heart, if that makes sense.
For sure.
It's matured in my heart to even include, like, toxic leadership, like how to not be a toxic leader, how to be healthy and live healthy in your friendships, in your leading.
Yes.
So it's just like, if you let the Lord refine you, and don't be thinking you know everything all the time. And I'm not saying don't start things. I'm just saying, like, be humble in your beginning. So if you want to start it and you feel called to start it, like, be okay with saying, I don't know everything.
Right.
Bring those people who do
So
know
good.
things before you, you know?
Yep.
So I think that has been my darkness of sorts, because that's not even, I haven't even started that yet.
Yeah.
But I'm still, like, sitting in it.
Yes.
And thinking about it and brainstorming for it. And still, my character is being refined still.
That's so good.
Because I couldn't start it and continue it.
Yeah.
And for it to be what the Lord wanted it to be, or what I even wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Where I was then.
That's so good.
So that's just an example of it.
Yeah.
But
no, for sure. And before we kind of close and wrap this up, I wanted to talk about one other thing, because my goal and my heart for this podcast is that we would have such a wide audience, to be honest.
Yeah.
A wide spectrum from Christian believers to non-believers to creatives that are graphic designers to
Everything.
influencers to whatever, all spectrums of life.
Yeah.
Right. And so I want to make sure that we really hit home on that. For us, being believers, is we have this ability to really ask God, and we first go after him, right? We seek him and we get clarity from him. But you may not be a believer. And right now that's okay, right? So you're maybe like listening to this and like, oh, well, that makes sense. Well, cool. Like, you know, they have this higher being, and you know, it makes sense for them, but it may not make sense for me. So I want to give one last thought to, if you're just a creative that is looking to start somewhere, what is some advice that you would give that creative? So go back, and I would maybe take it back to 6 years ago when you started photography. Speak to that, Caitlyn. Speak to that person. What encouragement would you give her sitting on the other side?
I think that the biggest thing that I would say to myself would just be to not give up, which is what we're talking about, grit. Don't give up. You can do it. You really can. So the night that I feel like I mark myself as I'm a professional now, like I have a business, this is for real, I'm gonna make a go of this, you know. I bought a new camera body. I had a new lens, I think. I bought a flash. Like, I was ready for this event. But there were so many other photographers there who had bigger flash or the bulb flash or this flash or that flash. I just still don't even know what are they now. I'm staying in my lane. But I had so many opportunities to just compare myself and say, like, I'm not good enough or I'm not professional. They're professional. But I just remember, like, I'm going to do the best that I can with what I have and where I'm at now. I'm going to research. Yeah. I'm going to figure out what looks the best. I'm going to get all the emotion that I can. That's what makes a good photo. The emotion. I'm going to get all the laughter, all of the excitement. And I just feel like that was such a marking time for me. And I feel like that was like, I remember that as like the start. And so I just feel like if you are starting out as a creative, you just have to start. Yeah. And take that opportunity that comes. Do your research. Don't go in blind. But just give it your best. Give it your all. And be honest with people. Yeah. And if you do that, I think that you're going to build from there. Yeah. Everybody starts somewhere. Nobody starts a bona fide professional with all. You can't. Professional is knowledge plus experience. Yeah. And so you have to start to get that experience.
So good. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
I'm just excited that Creative Grit is your first episode. So that means you have to keep this podcast going. Can't stop.
Wow. But seriously, thank you so much for just the wisdom and just gracing us with your presence. I hope and I pray that God would continue to give you grand ideas that would ultimately not only benefit you and your family, but would ultimately benefit the kingdom. Yeah. And so super excited for everything that God has for you.
We're going to keep collaborating
for joining. Yes. So join us, watch, subscribe, like, all the things. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.